Hello, this video is on the European and US pensions crisis, but it also relates to the birth rate in those countries and whether there are policies the governments are doing which are affecting the ways that people are structuring their lives. For instance, whilst in Britain the teenage pregnancy birth rate is probably the highest in the world, in the developed world, that is. The amount of people who have degrees, who have good, comfortable jobs, statistically have fewer children. Now, this might all seem very, very good because, of course, fewer people, greater resources, greater GDP means that in the long run we might all become richer. But that doesn't really bear out for equitable distribution of wealth in the future. For instance, if you have a low birth rate, but people in their prime work years are earning lots of money, they might be more inclined to spend that money on consumer items, on TVs and things. All these things are going to be redundant. They're going to be replaced by new technology. And then what legacy has that person got? They might have a couple of houses. When they die, those houses are going to be empty. If the housing price is still high, nobody's going to be the people with the most children, those who are poor, who do not have access to higher education because they made those choices to not have a family, to have a family rather than a good job or an education. They're not going to be able to afford those houses. So what will happen? They'll be chopped up into flats, as we see all over our urban landscape in America and Europe. And what will they be replaced with? Well, we can't have a growing economy without a constant labour supply, and so that means immigration. Now, there are cultural problems and military problems as well from having a diverse group of people, especially if the system is based on a community dialect, that is a tension between communities. That is very much the case in the United States, and that's why Europeans cannot understand why Americans would be conservatives. But this was actually spelt out for me by a conservative or right-wing viewpoint on economic matters on another user's channel. Why do most Americans who are of European descent do not want higher taxes? Well, they know that those taxes will be used for projects for immigrant people, or they believe so. Now, if there's not a continuing increase in birth rate to match the continuing longevity of the lifespan of the so-called baby boomer generation, then obviously there's going to be a pensions crisis. That's because pension providers are not trusted because of financial crises that have happened since the 1990s. People don't really want to answer the embarrassing question of why you 50 and just living with your wife and you've not had as many children. That is just a question that people cannot get around. It's just socially not acceptable yet to confront this question. People in Europe and America are having children later and later in life. There's no rule against it. There's no sort of government programs or anything that is encouraging people to do this. It's just a social trend, it seems. But to get around this problem, Sweden and Germany particularly have made big steps. They've introduced mortgage and rental apartment rental holidays for young couples with children. They have also introduced baby bonds. Now, this is a question of our time. People, if people are to own their civilization, they must first resupply it with people of their own culture and kind. 2, they must think for themselves, because, as an astute film once said, what this is all about is whether this is our time or your time, and since we started thinking for you, this is our time now. I think you might be knowing which film I'm referencing, but it's put through the prism of the prism of science fiction, but it's very astute to our time. Who does own civilization? The people who are the most educated, right, are often the people who are most committed because they're most indoctrinated to a certain belief system. And if they control the media, certain media, it's like ideologies are almost like vapours from the ground. Every individual has an idea, but those vapours are taken up and form denser and denser concentrations of ideology, basically like clouds floating over the earth. And we all in our experience, as we walk through life, take on different parts of those sort of political vapours and internalise them, and we either agree with them to a more or lesser extent. And this sometimes affects our consumption and lifestyle choices. Okay. Now, how do we solve the pensions problem? Well, I would say the best way to solve a problem that started with over materialism and consumption is to put on a certain proportion of every good and service that is bought or sold, and a certain proportion of that value would be taken through electronically through a credit system when you pay it at the till for a good or a service, or over the phone for insurance. That would be invested for 3 years with the government or central bank, and then that would be returned back to the producer with interest, if there is a return, the producer of that good or service. But through that process, money would be deposited in a national pension fund. Also, the any share over 6% return would be invested for 3 years as a bond with government, and then the interest, of course, would then be returned. The bond would be returned with interest. Now, by doing this, the government would be able to have funds to produce work for the poor, and not just jobs but careers. That's the important thing. People with careers should shut up talking about their careers to people who have jobs. Okay? Because people who have jobs, they hate their jobs. People with careers, they love their careers. Okay? Now, also we can take on policies similar to Germany and Sweden, and perhaps link in the future mortgages and student fees, so that people can have immediate housing straight after their university degree. And then perhaps we can get more families who have university degrees, rather than creating a poor underclass that has has a different identity from the mainstream culture, and who the government seems to be intent on mixing with every foreign immigration scheme they can, whether intentionally or accidentally. I hope you'll comment, and hope this goes somewhere to solving the problem intellectually. Okay, thank you. Bye.